The red and blue lights pulsed in the rearview mirror, smearing the rain-slicked windshield in hard strokes of neon. Officer Mitchell Corbin figured it was just another routine shakedown. He already had the baggie of crystal meth palmed and ready to drop into the center console of the sleek black Mercedes. What he didn't know was that the black woman sitting calmly behind the wheel was no civilian. She was Valerie Reynolds, newly appointed regional director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Her vehicle was recording every second of the stop from 6 hidden camera angles. Philadelphia wept a cold, relentless November rain that Tuesday night. The streets of the 12th District shone with oil and runoff, reflecting the jaundiced glow of the street lamps like a shattered mirror. Inside car 44, Detective Mitchell Corbin drummed thick fingers against the steering wheel. 15 years on the job had worn the shine off his badge and eaten whatever morals he'd once carried. Heavy-set, square-jawed, eyes always calculating leverage, he scanned the traffic rolling down Broad Street the way a hunter scans a tree line. He didn't look for crime. He looked for opportunity. In the passenger seat, Officer Bernardo Shaw nervously picked at the peeling rim of a paper coffee cup. 6 months out of the academy, Shaw still wore the naive glow of a man who believed the uniform stood for absolute justice. Corbin hated that glow. For 3 months he'd worked to extinguish it, teaching the kid the real rules of the street. They were the kings of the concrete, and everyone else was just a peasant begging for mercy. "Slow night, Mitch," Shaw muttered, wiping condensation from his side of the windshield. "Nights are only as slow as you let them be, kid," Corbin answered, voice a low gravel rasp. Corbin had a system. He targeted out-of-state plates, high-end cars driven by minorities, people he assumed would either be too scared to fight back or too buried in the system for internal affairs to take them seriously. He called it taxing. A little cash here, a seized vehicle there. When he needed to boost his arrest numbers to keep the captain off his back, a mysterious baggie of narcotics would suddenly appear during a search. The old-timers called it the dropsy. Corbin was a master of it. Ahead of them, a black 2024 Mercedes-Benz G-Class glided through the intersection, paint swallowing the city lights, windows tinted dark. As it passed beneath a high-pressure sodium lamp, Corbin caught a glimpse of the driver through a slightly cracked window, a black woman in her late 40s. His lips curled into a faint, predatory smile. "Look at this," he sneered, nodding toward the SUV. "Probably running weight up to New York or driving her boyfriend's ride. Let's see what she's holding." "Mitch, they're not speeding. Taillights are fine. We don't have probable cause," Shaw said, voice tightening. Corbin hit the gas. The cruiser's engine roared, tires hissed on the wet asphalt. "Probable cause is whatever I write in the report, Bernardo." She drifted over the yellow line. "I saw it. You saw it." Shaw swallowed hard and looked down at his lap. "Right, drifted." Corbin flicked the switch. Sirens wailed, a sharp, piercing shriek that cut through the heavy rhythm of the rain, and the light bar ignited. Inside the Mercedes, Valerie Reynolds glanced up at her rearview mirror. The flashing lights washed over calm, unreadable features. 22 years climbing the grueling, male-dominated, politically treacherous ladder of the FBI had taught her how to stare down cartel bosses, corrupt politicians, and domestic terrorists. A local police cruiser did not rattle her. She smoothly engaged her turn signal and pulled the heavy SUV onto the shoulder under the flickering light of a broken neon billboard. Shifted into park, laid both hands flat on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. Posture relaxed but commanding. Tailored charcoal blazer over a crisp white blouse. In the glove compartment, her FBI badge, a loaded Glock 19, and a secure federal communication device. She also knew the statistics. She knew what happened on dark, rainy roads. She knew the reality of the world she lived in, independent of the powerful badge shielded in that glove box. With one finger, she pressed a small, discreet button on the rearview mirror. A tiny blue LED flickered to life. The vehicle, specially modified by the Bureau's technical division, began silently recording high-definition audio and video from the dash, the rear, the cabin, and the side mirrors. Every word, every movement would be instantly encrypted and uploaded to a secure federal server. She watched in the side mirror as a burly officer stepped out of the cruiser, adjusting his utility belt. He didn't unholster his weapon, but his hand rested casually on the grip. The swagger in his walk told her everything she needed to know before he even opened his mouth. This was a man used to terrorizing people in the dark. "Let's see what you want, officer," Valerie whispered to herself, voice smooth and chillingly calm. Corbin approached the driver's side, flashlight gripped tightly in his left hand. He shone the blinding beam directly into the side mirror, a classic intimidation tactic designed to blind and disorient. Shaw flanked him on the passenger side, standing a few feet back, hand resting nervously on his radio. Corbin tapped the heavy metal flashlight against the tempered glass. Tap, tap, tap. A demand, not a request. Valerie pressed the button. The window slid down. Cold, damp air flooded the pristine, leather-scented cabin. She did not squint or turn her face away from the light. She looked straight ahead, hands remaining perfectly still on the wheel. "License, registration, and proof of insurance," Corbin demanded, tone clipped and aggressive. No greeting, no reason for the stop. "Good evening, officer," Valerie said, voice even, modulated, devoid of any tremble. "Before I reach for my documents, I would like to know why I was pulled over." Corbin lowered the flashlight slightly, angling it so it illuminated her face. He analyzed her. She wasn't dressed like a street dealer, but in his warped world view, that just meant she was higher up the food chain. Or a lawyer. He hated lawyers. He loved breaking them even more. "You failed to maintain your lane," he lied smoothly. "You were drifting, swerving. Smells like you might be under the influence. Now hand over the documents before I pull you out of this vehicle for resisting." Valerie's eyes flicked to the nameplate on his chest. "I haven't consumed any alcohol, Officer Corbin, and I assure you, I have maintained my lane perfectly. My license is in my wallet, which is in my purse on the passenger seat. My registration is in the glove compartment. I am going to slowly reach for my purse first. Is that acceptable?" Corbin sneered. She was talking to him like he was a child. He hated women who talked like that. "Just get it, no sudden moves." Valerie slowly moved her right hand, grasped the leather purse, retrieved her Pennsylvania driver's license, a standard-issue card flagged in the federal database as a protected identity, and handed it through the window. She deliberately kept the glove box closed for now. Corbin snatched the card, shone his light on it. Valerie Reynolds. No red flags jumped out at a glance. He wasn't looking at a database, just the plastic. "Whose car is this, Valerie?" he asked, intentionally using her first name to demean her. "Bit out of your price range, isn't it? What do you do for a living?" "The vehicle belongs to my employer," she answered calmly. "I work for the federal government." Corbin let out a short, barking laugh. "The government, right? What, you sort mail down at the post office?" "Listen to me, Valerie. I'm going to run this license. You sit tight. Keep your hands where my partner can see them. If you move, Shaw over there is going to have a problem." Valerie turned her head slightly to look at the young officer standing by the passenger window. Shaw looked visibly uncomfortable. His eyes darted away when she made contact. "He's new," she assessed instantly. terrified of his training officer, an accessory to whatever this man is about to do. Corbin marched back to the cruiser, slid into the driver's seat, wiped rain from his forehead. "What's the deal?" Shaw asked over the radio from outside. "She's got an attitude," Corbin grunted into his shoulder mic. He typed her name and the SUV's plate into the mobile data terminal. The system paused. A small spinning wheel appeared. Usually the return was instantaneous. After 10 seconds, a strange prompt flashed. "Restricted tag. Do not detain. Contact dispatch for verification." Corbin frowned, tapping the screen with a thick finger. "Stupid system glitching again," he muttered. He'd seen restricted tags before, undercover vice cars, high-level city officials, but the system didn't specifically say FBI director. To Corbin, a glitch meant an unregistered ghost car, the kind used by high-end cartels to bypass automated plate readers. In his twisted logic, this was the jackpot. If this was cartel money, there would be a lot of cash in that car. Cash he could seize under civil asset forfeiture, keeping a heavy slice for himself. "She's riding dirty," he announced over the radio to Shaw. "System can't even read the plates. Ghost car. We're doing a search." Shaw's voice came back strained. "Mitch, we need a warrant or probable cause for a full toss." "I smell weed, Bernardo. That's all the probable cause the courts need." Corbin killed the radio. He reached into his tactical vest. Deep in the lining of his left pocket, he kept his insurance policy. A small, sealed baggie of crystal meth confiscated off a street junkie 3 weeks earlier and never logged into evidence. He palmed it expertly, hiding it in the meaty grip of his left hand. He stepped back out into the rain and approached the driver's window again. "Step out of the vehicle, Valerie," he commanded, hand resting heavily on his holster. "Now." Valerie looked at him. She saw the shift in his posture, the artificial aggression manufactured to justify violence. "Officer Corbin, I do not consent to any searches. I have provided my identification. Am I under arrest or am I free to go?" "You're stepping out of the damn car right now," Corbin snarled, pulling his flashlight up. "I smell marijuana emanating from the vehicle. That gives me probable cause to search. Step out or I will break this window and drag you out." Valerie did not flinch. Her heart rate remained a steady 65 beats per minute. She was a woman who had negotiated hostage situations with men holding detonators. A corrupt street cop with a god complex was merely a nuisance, but a dangerous one, and she wanted him exposed entirely and unequivocally. If she flashed her badge now, he would back down, apologize, and go back to terrorizing people who didn't have a badge of their own. No, Valerie Reynolds was going to let him dig the grave. She was going to let him jump in. Then she was going to bury him. "I am stepping out of the vehicle," she said clearly, ensuring the microphones picked up her exact phrasing. "I am unarmed and I am complying with your orders under duress." She opened the heavy door and stepped into the freezing rain. It instantly soaked into her blazer, but she stood tall, towering over Corbin slightly in her low heels. She crossed her hands in front of her, remaining perfectly still. "Go stand by the hood of my cruiser," Corbin barked. "Shaw, watch her." Valerie walked back to the police car, the blue and red lights washing over her stoic face. Shaw stood a few feet away, arms crossed against the cold. He looked at her, and for a fleeting second, she saw a flicker of guilt in the young man's eyes. "You don't have to let him do this," Valerie said softly, voice carrying only to Shaw over the sound of the rain. Shaw stiffened. "Ma'am, just keep quiet and cooperate. It'll go easier." "You wear that uniform to protect people, Officer Shaw," she continued, tone conversational but piercing. "Whatever he is about to find in my car, you and I both know it isn't mine. When this goes to trial, your silence will be viewed as complicity." Shaw swallowed hard and looked away. "I don't know what you're talking about." Up at the Mercedes, Corbin was putting on a theatrical performance. He shone his flashlight under the seats and into the door panels, making a show of tossing the floor mats. It was sloppy. He wasn't looking for evidence. He was looking for a hiding spot for his own. He leaned heavily into the driver's side, upper body completely inside the vehicle. With his right hand, he rummaged through the center console. With his left, the one hiding the baggie, he smoothly slipped the drugs between the passenger seat and the leather armrest, leaving it just visible enough to be discovered on a second glance. Corbin backed out of the car, wiping his hands together as if disgusted. "Well, well, well," he called out, voice dripping with triumphant malice. He walked over to the passenger side, opened the door, and shone his light directly onto the baggie. "What do we have here?" He reached in with a gloved hand and pulled out the baggie of crystal meth, holding it up like a trophy in the rain. Shaw flinched, eyes widening. He'd been riding with Corbin long enough to know the man was dirty, skimmed cash, took bribes, but planting a felony amount of narcotics on a woman who looked like an accountant? This was a line even Shaw hadn't seen him cross so brazenly. "Looks like we found the reason you were swerving, Valerie," Corbin sneered, walking back toward her. He dangled the baggie in front of her face. "Looks like crystal meth, a trafficking amount, too. You're looking at mandatory minimums, lady. State penitentiary." Valerie looked at the baggie, then directly into Corbin's eyes. There was no fear, no outrage, no desperate plea of innocence. Her utter lack of panic unsettled him for a microscopic fraction of a second before his ego crushed the doubt. "That does not belong to me," she stated, voice projecting clearly for the microphones she knew were recording everything, from the cruiser's dash cam as well as her own vehicle's array. "You placed that inside my vehicle, Officer Corbin." "Oh, so I'm a dirty cop now?" Corbin laughed, pulling his handcuffs from his belt. "Turn around, hands behind your back." Valerie complied. She turned, presenting her wrists. The cold steel ratcheted tightly around them. Corbin intentionally clamped them down a notch too tight, trying to elicit a wince. She gave him nothing. "You have the right to remain silent," he recited, breath hot and smelling of stale coffee against her neck. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As he read the Miranda rights, Shaw walked forward. "Mitch," Shaw hissed, leaning in. "What are we doing? She doesn't fit the profile. She's clean. The car is spotless." "Shut up, Bernardo," Corbin snapped, shoving Valerie roughly toward the back seat of the cruiser. "She's a mule. They dress them up nice to fool rookies like you. We're taking her in. Call for a tow truck to impound the Benz. We're tearing that thing apart at the yard tomorrow." Valerie was forced into the cramped, hard plastic back seat. The smell of vomit, cheap disinfectant, and despair permeated the air. Rain hammered against the roof. Through the wire mesh divider, she watched Corbin and Shaw argue in hushed, angry tones outside. She felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. It wasn't the first time she'd been in the back of a police car, but it was the first time she was entirely in control of the men who put her there. She adjusted her wrists slightly, feeling the pinch of the metal. Corbin climbed into the driver's seat and slammed the door. Shaw got in a moment later, staring blankly out the windshield. "You're making a colossal mistake, Officer Corbin," Valerie said from the darkness of the back seat. Corbin looked at her through the rearview mirror, flashing a yellow, crooked grin. "The only mistake here is you getting out of bed this morning, sweetheart. I own this city. By tomorrow morning you'll be begging me for a plea deal just to see the sun again." He threw the cruiser into drive and pulled away from the curb, leaving the heavy armored Mercedes sitting alone in the rain. Its hidden cameras continued to record silently, the encrypted data stream pinging off a satellite and landing directly onto a heavily guarded server in Quantico, Virginia. The drive to the 12th District Precinct took 15 minutes. Corbin drove aggressively, hitting potholes intentionally to bounce his prisoner around the back. Valerie braced her knees against the partition, riding out the turbulence with silent dignity. When they arrived, the precinct, a brutalist concrete structure that looked like a forgotten bunker, Corbin dragged her out of the car. He paraded her through the bullpen, wanting the other night shift cops to see his catch. Phones rang, keyboards clattered, and the air was thick with the smell of cheap takeout and exhaustion. Captain Thomas O'Grady stood by the booking desk, nursing a mug of tea. An older man nearing retirement, he wore a tired expression that suggested he'd seen too much corruption and lacked the energy to fight it anymore. "What do we have, Corbin?" O'Grady asked, looking Valerie up and down. His seasoned eyes immediately registered the mismatch: the tailored clothes, the defiant posture, the utter lack of junkie panic. "Traffic stop," Corbin announced loudly, slapping the baggie of meth down on the booking counter. Driver was swerving, smelled marijuana, searched the vehicle, and found 2 ounces of crystal shoved in the center console. "She's a high-level mule, Cap." O'Grady picked up the baggie, then looked at Valerie. "Name?" "I've already provided my driver's license to Officer Corbin," Valerie said calmly. "I suggest you look at it." Corbin tossed her purse onto the counter and fished out the ID, handing it to the captain. O'Grady looked at the license. "Valerie Reynolds," he read. He looked at her. "You have a phone call, Ms. Reynolds. I suggest you use it to call a very good lawyer." "I do not need a lawyer, Captain O'Grady," Valerie said, reading his name tag. "But I would like my handcuffs removed, and I would like you to make a phone call on my behalf." Corbin snorted loudly. "Listen to her. Thinks she's at the Ritz." Valerie ignored him entirely. She locked eyes with the captain. Her voice dropped an octave, carrying the weight of unquestionable authority. "Captain O'Grady, my name is Valerie Reynolds. I am the Regional Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation." The vehicle officer Corbin unlawfully stopped and searched his federal property. The narcotics he claims to have found were planted by his own hand, an act captured on 6 different high-definition federal surveillance cameras hidden within my vehicle. The bullpen went dead, silent. The clatter of keyboards stopped. The ringing phone seemed to fade into the background. Every eye in the room turned toward the booking desk. Corbin froze. The arrogant smirk melted off his face, replaced by a sudden, sickening pallor. He looked at Shaw, who looked like he was about to vomit on his own boots. O'Grady stared at Valerie, the tea mug trembling slightly in his hand. He looked down at the driver's license again, then back at her. "Director Reynolds?" "Yes, Captain," Valerie said, her eyes shifting to Corbin, pinning him like an insect to a corkboard. "And I am formally placing Detective Mitchell Corbin under federal arrest for deprivation of rights under color of law, evidence tampering, and possession of a Schedule II narcotic with intent to distribute." She took a slow, deep breath, relishing the absolute terror blossoming in Corbin's eyes. "Now," Valerie said, her voice echoing in the silent precinct, "take these damn cuffs off me." For a long, agonizing moment, the only sound in the 12th District Precinct was the relentless drumming of the Philadelphia rain against the barred windows. Captain O'Grady stared at Valerie Reynolds, his breath hitching in his throat. He looked down at the Pennsylvania driver's license resting on the scratched surface of the booking desk, then up at the woman standing before him with the icy composure of a sovereign. I need to verify this," O'Grady stammered, his hand reaching for the precinct's landline. "Verify it however you see fit, Captain," Valerie replied, extending her restrained hand slightly. "But first, remove these cuffs. You are currently holding a federal director hostage under false pretenses. The longer this steel stays on my wrists, the wider the blast radius becomes for your career." O'Grady swallowed hard. He dug into his pocket, hand visibly shaking, and pulled out his universal handcuff key. "Cap, wait!" Corbin yelled, panic finally piercing through his bravado. His face was flushed, a blotchy red creeping up his thick neck. "She's lying. Look at her. She's playing you, O'Grady. It's a fake ID. Mules use high-end fakes all the time. I found the crystal in her console. I saw her swerving." O'Grady hesitated, the key inches from the keyhole. "Do it, Captain," Valerie commanded. It wasn't a request. It was an absolute directive from a woman used to bending bureaucracies to her will. With a metallic click, the cuffs fell away. Valerie calmly brought her hands forward, rubbing her wrists where the steel had bitten into her skin. She reached out, grabbed her purse from the counter, and unzipped the side pocket. She bypassed the civilian smartphone and withdrew a heavy matte black satellite phone, a device issued strictly to top-tier federal executives. She dialed a single digit and pressed send. "Reynolds, code blue, Philadelphia, 12th District Precinct," she said crisply into the receiver. "Secure the perimeter. Secure my vehicle on Broad Street. Bring the tech package." She ended the call and placed the heavy phone back on the counter. Corbin let out a desperate, scoffing laugh, though his eyes darted nervously around the room. "Code blue? What is this? A movie? You think you can just waltz in here, pretend to be a Fed, and scare us? I've been on the job 15 years, lady. You're going to a holding cell." Valerie turned to face him fully. "Detective Corbin, before my team arrives and dismantles your life, I want to give you an opportunity. You are a sworn officer of the law. You made an arrest. Captain O'Grady is here. Your partner, Officer Shaw, is here. And half the night shift is listening." She gestured broadly to the silent, staring detectives and patrol cops in the bullpen. "Tell them exactly what happened," Valerie said, her voice deceptively gentle. "Put your official narrative on the verbal record right now. How did the stop go? Where did you find the drugs?" Shaw, standing near the precinct doors, looked like he was vibrating with sheer terror. "Mitch, don't," he whispered. "Shut up, Bernardo," Corbin snapped, stepping forward, thrusting his chest out to reclaim his lost authority. He pointed a thick, calloused finger at Valerie. "I'll tell you exactly what happened, and it's going in the report. I observed this suspect's vehicle, a black Mercedes SUV, crossing the double yellow line on Broad Street. I initiated a lawful traffic stop. Upon approaching the vehicle, I detected the strong odor of burnt marijuana, giving me probable cause for a search." Corbin was pacing now, performing for his peers, trying to rally the thin blue line to his defense. "I ordered the suspect out of the vehicle. She was uncooperative, belligerent, and exhibited signs of extreme nervousness. I conducted a lawful search of the vehicle's interior. Tucked deep inside the center console, beneath a tray, I discovered a clear plastic baggie containing a white crystalline substance, which I immediately recognized as methamphetamine. 2 ounces, a trafficking weight." He stopped and crossed his arms, glaring at Valerie with a mixture of hatred and desperate defiance. "That's the truth. That's the sworn testimony of a decorated detective, and it's going to put you in a cage." Valerie listened to the entire fabrication without blinking. A faint, almost pitying smile touched the corners of her mouth. "Thank you, Mitchell," she said softly. The heavy reinforced doors of the precinct suddenly blew open. A flood of men and women wearing tactical gear and navy blue windbreakers emblazoned with large yellow letters, FBI, surged into the bullpen. There were at least a dozen of them, moving with precision and ruthless efficiency. They immediately took strategic positions, hands resting on their holstered weapons. The precinct cops, stunned into absolute submission, slowly raised their hands away from their duty belts. A tall, sharp-featured man in a tailored suit walked through the tactical team carrying a ruggedized federal tablet. This was Special Agent David Kensington, Valerie's right-hand man. "Director Reynolds," Kensington said, stopping a few feet from her. He glared at Corbin with naked disgust. "The vehicle is secured. A secondary team is en route with the flatbed. The data stream has been fully downloaded and decrypted." "Excellent. Let's show Captain O'Grady and his men a movie," Valerie said. She turned to a large flat-screen monitor mounted on the wall behind the booking desk, usually used to display shift schedules and active warrants. Agent Kensington cast the interior cabin feed to that screen. He tapped the tablet. The monitor blinked, then flared to life. The high-definition, night vision-enhanced video was crystal clear. It showed the interior of Valerie's Mercedes from a camera cleverly concealed within the rearview mirror housing. The timestamp in the corner matched the exact time of the traffic stop. The entire precinct watched in dead silence. On the screen, Valerie stepped out of the vehicle into the rain. Then the heavy, rain-soaked figure of Detective Mitchell Corbin leaned into the frame. The audio was pristine, picking up his heavy breathing and the rustle of his tactical vest. They watched as Corbin rummaged loudly in the center console with his right hand. Then the camera caught it. The undeniable, damning detail. His left hand came up from his pocket. Pinched between his thumb and forefinger was a baggie of crystal meth. He smoothly slipped it between the passenger seat and the leather armrest, leaving it slightly exposed. He backed out of the frame. A second later, the audio picked up his triumphant, theatrical voice. "Well, well, well, what do we have here?" The video looped, playing the moment of the plant a second time. Captain O'Grady let out a long, ragged exhale, sinking into his chair behind the desk. He looked at Corbin as if the man had just mutated into a monster before his eyes. Corbin stood frozen, mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. The arrogant bluster had entirely evaporated, replaced by a hollow, paralyzing dread. He looked at the screen, then at the heavily armed federal agents surrounding him, and finally at Valerie. "You—" Corbin choked out, voice a barely audible rasp. "You set me up." "I didn't set you up, detective," Valerie replied, her tone ringing with absolute, crushing finality. "I merely gave you the rope. You chose to tie the noose, place it around your own neck, and jump. Agent Kensington, arrest this man." Kensington stepped forward, effortlessly spinning the heavy-set detective around and kicking his legs apart. The sharp metallic ratcheting of federal handcuffs echoed loudly in the silent room. The precinct's interrogation room was a sterile, windowless box that smelled of stale sweat, floor wax, and decades of desperate lies. It was a room where Mitchell Corbin had broken dozens of men utilizing intimidation, physical force, and fabricated evidence. Now he sat on the wrong side of the bolted-down steel table. His badge and gun were gone. His tie had been confiscated. He looked small, deflated, a predator suddenly realizing he was trapped at the bottom of the food chain. Valerie Reynolds walked into the room, followed closely by Agent Kensington. She carried a manila folder, which she tossed carelessly onto the table. It landed with a heavy, ominous thud. She pulled out the metal chair opposite Corbin and sat down, folding her hands neatly in front of her. "Let's skip the formalities, Mitchell," Valerie began, voice calm and businesslike. "You are facing a litany of federal charges. Deprivation of rights under color of law carries a potential sentence of up to 10 years. Evidence tampering is another 20. Possession of a Schedule II narcotic with intent to distribute, Because let's be clear, planting drugs is distributing them, carries a mandatory minimum. If you insist on taking this to trial, I will personally ensure you spend the next 3 decades in a maximum security federal penitentiary, surrounded by men who harbor a very specific, violent hatred for corrupt cops. Corbin swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing nervously. He stared at his handcuffed wrists resting on the table. I want a lawyer. You are entitled to one, Valerie said smoothly. But before you call an attorney to negotiate a plea you will never get, I want you to understand exactly why I was driving down Broad Street tonight. Corbin looked up, eyes bloodshot and confused. What? Did you honestly think a regional director of the FBI was out on a midnight joyride through the 12th district? Valerie leaned forward slightly, the intensity in her eyes pinning him to his seat. You think I just happened to be in your hunting ground, Mitchell? Corbin's breath hitched. The realization began to dawn on him, cold and terrifying. 4 months ago, Valerie continued, opening the manila folder and spreading out a series of high-resolution surveillance photographs. You initiated a traffic stop on a man named Darren Hopkins. The street calls him Ghost. You pulled him over on Lehigh Avenue. You claimed you smelled marijuana. You searched his trunk and found $85,000 in shrink-wrapped cash. Corbin's face turned the color of old ash. You didn't log that cash into evidence, Valerie said, tapping a photograph of Corbin's cruiser parked in a dark alley. You seized it under the guise of civil forfeiture, but the paperwork never made it to the district attorney. The money just vanished, and Darren Hopkins went to jail on a bogus weapons charge you manufactured to keep him quiet. Hopkins is a scumbag, Corbin hissed defensively, old instincts flaring up. He's a mid-level distributor for the Kensington Avenue cruise. He had that money coming from poison he sells to kids. Darren Hopkins, Valerie corrected him sharply, is a confidential federal informant. He has been working directly under my division for 14 months, feeding us intelligence on a massive cartel money laundering operation operating through Philadelphia's real estate market. The $85,000 you stole was federal bait money, Mitchell. We recorded the serial numbers of every single bill. Corbin squeezed his eyes shut. A soft groan escaped his lips. He was completely out of his depth. He hadn't just shaken down a street dealer. He had robbed the federal government and derailed a major cartel investigation. Now here is where your situation transitions from catastrophic to utterly hopeless, Valerie said, her voice dropping into a deadly conspiratorial whisper. We traced that bait money. You didn't keep it all, did you? You're a street-level earner, Mitchell, a tax collector, and tax collectors always kick up to the crown. She slid a new photograph across the table. It showed Corbin sitting in a booth at an upscale steakhouse in Center City. Sitting across from him, holding a thick manila envelope, was a gray-haired man in a bespoke suit. Judge Harrison Caldwell, Valerie stated. A man who has inexplicably dismissed 42 narcotics trafficking cases in the last 3 years, always due to procedural errors or faulty warrants. Warrants that you and your specialized unit happened to write. Corbin stared at the picture of the judge, hands trembling violently. You're not the mastermind, Mitchell. You're just a greedy, arrogant thug with a badge, Valerie said, leaning back in her chair. Judge Caldwell is the target. He is providing judicial cover for a cartel laundering operation. And he is using dirty cops like you to skim off the competition and seize unrecorded cash to fund his re-election campaigns. The silence in the room was absolute, save for the hum of the overhead fluorescent lights. Your partner, Officer Shaw, is currently in the next room, Valerie mentioned casually. Agent Kensington here had a very brief chat with him. The kid is terrified. He's young. He's broke. and he doesn't want to go to federal prison. He has already agreed to testify that you routinely carried drop drugs, that you targeted minorities for illegal searches, and that you bragged about your connections to Judge Caldwell. Shaw is going to walk away clean because he wasn't part of the extortion ring. He was just your unfortunate audience. Valerie closed the folder. The loud smack of the cardboard made Corbin jump. "So here is your one and only lifeline, detective," she said. "You are going to waive your right to counsel for the next 24 hours. You are going to let my technical team fit you with a covert wire. Tomorrow afternoon, you are going to walk into Judge Caldwell's chambers. You are going to hand him his cut of the money you taxed this week, and you are going to get him on tape discussing the network." Corbin swallowed dryly. "If Caldwell finds out I'm wearing a wire, the people he works with, the cartel, they'll kill me. They'll kill my family." "If you refuse," Valerie countered, devoid of any sympathy, "I will hold a press conference in 1 hour. I will release the high-definition video of you planting meth in my vehicle to every news outlet in the country. You will be the national face of police corruption. Judge Caldwell will cut you loose, disavow you, and you will face a jury that has seen you on tape committing a federal felony. When you get to prison, the very people you locked up with fake evidence will be waiting for you in the yard." Valerie stood up, buttoning her charcoal blazer. She looked down at the broken man in the chair. "You wanted to be a predator, Mitchell. You wanted to rule the concrete," she said, coldly. "But you forgot one fundamental rule of the jungle. There is always a bigger apex predator." She turned toward the door. "Agent Kensington, give him 2 minutes to decide. If he says no, book him into general population at the federal holding facility and leak the tape to the press." As Valerie reached for the door handle, Corbin's voice broke the silence, choked with defeat and the bitter taste of his own ruin. "Wait!" Valerie paused, not looking back. "I'll wear the wire," Corbin whispered to the steel table. "I'll give you Caldwell." The following afternoon, the sky over Philadelphia remained a bruised, sullen gray. Inside a nondescript FBI safe house on the outskirts of the Navy Yard, the air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and ozone from the electronic surveillance gear. Detective Mitchell Corbin sat rigidly in a metal folding chair, broad shoulders hunched, staring blankly at the cinder block wall. He was sweating through his pale blue button-down shirt. His hands, usually so steady when gripping a baton or palming fabricated evidence, trembled slightly as a federal technician adjusted the collar of his shirt. "Transmitter is secure, Director," the technician said, stepping back. He had embedded a microphone into the top button of Corbin's collar, with a backup wire taped flat against the detective's sternum, transmitting a continuous encrypted burst to the tactical van parked 3 blocks from the federal courthouse. Valerie Reynolds stood by the window, watching the rain slick the pavement outside. She turned, expression unreadable, and walked over to Corbin. She placed a thick manila envelope on the small table next to him. Inside was exactly $25,000 in marked federal bills, the exact amount Corbin had agreed to deliver as the judge's weekly tithe. "Let's review the parameters, Mitchell," Valerie said, voice a cool, steady hum that seemed to chill the room further. "You will enter Judge Caldwell's private chambers at exactly 4 o'clock. You will hand him the envelope. You must get him to acknowledge the source of the funds. I need him to explicitly mention the laundering operation, the real estate LLCs, or the cartel connections. Vague agreements will not hold up in court. You need to make him brag." Corbin swallowed dryly, eyes darting to the envelope. "Caldwell isn't an idiot. He's a sitting judge. He speaks in code. If I push too hard, he's going to know something is wrong." "Then you better be a very good actor," Special Agent David Kensington interjected, leaning against the door frame with his arms crossed. Because if you walk out of that courthouse without an actionable confession, your immunity deal vanishes. You'll be in a federal holding cell before dinner time, and the tape of you planting meth on the director will be playing on the evening news. Corbin wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead. He had spent his entire career operating under the assumption of invincibility, shielded by a badge and the silence of his peers. Now, stripped of his authority, he was nothing more than bait. "I can do it," Corbin rasped, picking up the envelope. "Just be ready if he has his muscle in there." "We will be listening to every heartbeat," Valerie replied. "Do not deviate from the script." An hour later, Corbin walked through the heavy marble columns of the Philadelphia County Courthouse. The metal detectors were a mere formality for a known detective. He was waved through by court officers who had no idea they were aiding a walking federal wiretap. He took the private elevator to the 4th floor, the domain of the senior judges. The heavy mahogany door to Judge Harrison Caldwell's chambers loomed at the end of a carpeted hallway. Corbin knocked twice, knuckles rapping against the polished wood. "Enter," a refined aristocratic voice called out. Corbin pushed the door open. The chambers were opulent, lined with leather-bound legal volumes, smelling of expensive cigar smoke and old money. Judge Caldwell sat behind a massive oak desk. He was a man in his early 60s, silver hair meticulously combed back, eyes as cold and calculating as a raptor's. He was casually signing a stack of legal documents, barely looking up as Corbin stepped inside and closed the door. "Mitchell," Caldwell said smoothly, gesturing to a leather wingback chair. "You're late, and you look terrible. You're sweating." "It's the humidity, Your Honor," Corbin lied, sinking into the chair. He felt the wire taped to his chest, pressing against his skin like a branding iron. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out the manila envelope, tossing it onto the center of the oak desk. 25 grand, the cut from the Kensington Avenue sweep, plus the excess we taxed from the transit mules. Caldwell didn't touch the envelope. He simply stared at it for a long moment, then looked up at Corbin. "You're usually much more discreet, Mitchell," Caldwell noted, voice dropping slightly in volume. "And you usually don't hand me cash directly unless there is a problem. What is the problem?" Corbin's heart hammered against his ribs. "Stick to the script," he thought desperately. "No problem, Judge. Just, things are getting hot," Corbin said, leaning forward, trying to inject a note of genuine anxiety into his voice. "The streets are talking. Word is the feds are sniffing around the ghost arrest. They're looking for the $85,000 we pulled from his trunk last month." Caldwell's eyes narrowed. He finally reached out and pulled the envelope toward him, slipping it into a drawer. "Let them sniff. The money was never logged. As far as the system is concerned, it doesn't exist. Ghost is sitting in a cell on a weapons charge. He isn't talking to anyone." "That's just it," Corbin pressed, feeling a terrifying adrenaline spike. "If the feds trace that money, it ties back to the cartel. The Sinaloa boys are getting restless, Harrison. They want to know when the clean money from the North Philly real estate LLCs is going to clear. They don't like waiting." The silence in the room stretched to a breaking point. Caldwell stared at Corbin, cold eyes dissecting the detective's sweaty brow, his rapid breathing, the slight tremor in his hands. "You are exceptionally nervous today, Mitchell," Caldwell said softly. He stood up from his desk and slowly walked around it, coming to a stop just inches from Corbin's chair. "Are you wearing a wire?" Corbin froze. The blood drained from his face. "What? No, Judge, come on." "Stand up," Caldwell commanded, voice suddenly sharp as breaking glass. In the tactical van 3 blocks away, Agent Kensington gripped the edge of the console. "He's making him, Director. We need to breach." "Hold," Valerie commanded, eyes locked on the audio visualizer, watching the jagged green lines of Corbin's spiking heart rate. Let it play out. Back in the chambers, Corbin slowly stood up. Caldwell reached out and patted down Corbin's waist, checking for a recording device on his belt, then patted his sides. He missed the micro-transmitter woven into the shirt button and the flat mic on the sternum. Caldwell stepped back, seemingly satisfied, but still suspicious. "You listen to me, Mitchell," Caldwell sneered, dropping the aristocratic facade. "You don't worry about the Sinaloa cartel. You don't worry about the LLCs. I handle the shell companies. I launder the cash through the commercial properties. And the Mexicans get their clean money. Your only job is to keep the streets quiet, seize the competitors' shipments, and bring me my percentage. Do you understand?" Corbin let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. He had it. The explicit confession. "I understand, Your Honor," Corbin said. "Good," Caldwell said, turning his back to return to his desk. "Now get out of my chambers before your paranoia infects me." "Actually, Harrison," a calm, commanding female voice echoed from the doorway. Caldwell whipped around. The heavy mahogany doors had swung silently open. Valerie Reynolds stood in the threshold, flanked by Agent Kensington and 4 heavily armed FBI tactical agents. Valerie held her federal badge up in her left hand. "You're going to need to clear your docket for the foreseeable future," Valerie said. Judge Harrison Caldwell stared at the FBI director, his mind violently struggling to process the sudden collapse of his empire. The color vanished from his aristocratic face, leaving him looking frail and remarkably old. "What is the meaning of this?" Caldwell demanded, relying on decades of judicial arrogance. "You cannot simply barge into my chambers. I am a sitting judge of the Superior Court. I will have you held in contempt." "You can try from a federal holding cell, Your Honor," Valerie replied, stepping into the room. Her eyes swept over the opulent office with absolute disdain. "Agent Kensington, secure the desk drawer. Retrieve the marked federal funds." Kensington moved swiftly, bypassing the stunned judge. He opened the top drawer and pulled out the manila envelope Corbin had just delivered. He opened it, comparing the top bill's serial number against a printed manifest on his tactical tablet. "Match confirmed, Director," Kensington stated. Valerie looked back at Caldwell. "Harrison Caldwell, you are under arrest for racketeering, conspiracy to commit money laundering, wire fraud, and acting as an accessory to narcotics trafficking. You have the right to remain silent. Given what we just recorded on Detective Corbin's wire, I highly suggest you exercise it." 2 tactical agents stepped forward, grabbing Caldwell by the arms. The judge didn't fight. The fight had instantly drained out of him, replaced by the crushing weight of a ruined legacy. As the agents ratcheted the steel handcuffs around his wrists, Caldwell locked eyes with Corbin. "You miserable, treacherous rat," Caldwell hissed, voice venomous. Corbin looked away, unable to meet the judge's gaze. He was a broken man, caught between the wrath of the cartel he had betrayed and the federal justice system he had mocked. "Get him out of here," Valerie ordered. As they led the judge away, Valerie turned her attention to Corbin. He was still standing by the leather wingback chair, looking like a hollow shell of the menacing predator who had pulled her over in the rain the night before. "You got what you wanted," Corbin muttered, staring at the floor. "Caldwell is finished. The cartel connection is exposed. Do I get my deal?" "You get exactly what I promised, Mitchell," Valerie said coldly. "You won't serve 30 years in a maximum security facility. The U.S. Attorney will recommend a 5-year sentence in a low-security federal camp in exchange for your continued testimony against Caldwell and the precinct's extortion ring." Corbin looked up, a flicker of desperate hope in his eyes. 5 years. That's it? "But let me be absolutely clear," Valerie continued, stepping into his personal space, voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "You are stripped of your badge. Your pension is gone. You will never hold a position of authority over another human being for the rest of your life. When you get out, you will be a convicted felon. You will carry the stain of a dirty cop forever. She paused, letting the reality of his new life settle over him. Your partner, Officer Shaw, submitted his resignation this morning, Valerie added. He turned state's evidence. He walked away because he had a conscience buried under his fear. You are only cooperating because you got caught. There is a vast difference, Mitchell. Take him to processing, Kensington. As Kensington escorted Corbin out of the chambers, Valerie stood alone in the opulent office. The silence of the room was heavy, thick with the ghosts of the corrupted justice that had been dealt from behind that oak desk for years. She walked over to the tall windows, looking out over the sprawling, rain-soaked city of Philadelphia. The streets looked cleaner from up here. But Valerie knew the truth. Corruption was a weed with deep roots. Pulling up Corbin and Caldwell wouldn't fix the whole garden, but it was a violent, necessary pruning. She reached into her blazer pocket, pulling out her secure satellite phone. She dialed the direct line to the Attorney General in Washington. "It's Reynolds," Valerie said as the line connected. "Code Blue is complete. We have the judge, we have the dirty cops, and we have the financial records. Send in the forensic accountants. We're tearing this city's underground apart." She ended the call and slipped the phone back into her pocket. The red and blue lights of the federal convoy were already flashing in the street below, cutting through the gray afternoon, a signal to the city that the untouchables had finally been touched. Valerie adjusted the lapels of her blazer, posture perfect, resolve unbroken. The hunt was never truly over, but today the predator had become the prey. She turned and walked out of the chambers, leaving the door wide open behind her.